Just a reminder to vote in this week's Locals poll, where you decide what deck I take to Locals every single week. Without any further ado, I hope you enjoyed the video. What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel, and for today we have the deck profile for the deck we took to Locals last week, being Ghoti. We did okay. As far as our record goes, it wasn't that great. We got 2 draws and 1 loss, but the more I thought about it, after considering what we tied with, we actually didn't do too bad. So we ended up tying with 2 decks that saw play at the most recent regional. So being able to just, not only take a game from them, but then also survive long enough to draw, I take that as kind of a win, considering this is just a casual deck. But anyways, we'll get a look at what it looks like on paper, then we'll get to the card by card. Alright, so starting off with the Ghoti monsters, we've got 2 Seeks Moonlight of the Ghoti. So this is one of the new guys from Phantom Nightmare, of course. And so Seeks, what it does is when it's normal or specialed, you can add a Ghoti monster and then banish a fish from your hand. So that way you can set up your tuners, and then also if it gets banished, you can special summon it by banishing a Ghoti from your hand, field, or grave. So this just really facilitates your synchro plays. It's a really nice card. Next, we have 2 copies of Snopios, Shade of the Ghoti. So this is, both this and Seeks are level 6, which kind of helps you go into your level 8s and 10s. But I'm running them at 2 because I don't want to draw multiples of them in an opening hand. But Snopios, during the main phase, as a quick effect, you can banish 2 fish from your hand or grave in order to special summon it. And this, of course, helps facilitate your synchro plays, especially with tuners such as Zep, which will immediately summon itself and perform a synchro summon. Next, 3 copies of Izip, Omen of the Ghoti. This guy is basically an extender. So that way you can get another free body, whether you want to do some of your link plays, or if you want to get 2 4s and then one of your level 2 tuners in order to go into a deep beyond. He's a little more flexible in that regard. And then if he gets banished, you can set a Ghoti spell or trap from your banished or grave. Next is another new card, being 3 copies of Keef, Merc of the Ghoti. So this guy is another extender. You can just summon him if you have a fish on the field, which is really nice. And then if he gets banished, he special summons himself back during the next standby phase. Very similar to the tuners. And he also can serve as removal, because when your opponent special summons something, you can target that special summon monster and one of your banished fish monsters. Banish both this card and the opponent's monster to special summon the banished fish. So that way you can get some of your tuners. If they have an effect that negates the special summon effect, you can use this to get it back anyways. So then they're just kind of like, oh no, what do I do? Next, getting into the tuners. 2 Zep, Ruby of the Ghoti. I alluded to this one earlier. So basically, if it gets banished during your opponent's turn, it can immediately special summon itself, and then upon special summon, immediately synchro summon. So you can use this during your opponent's turn, a little more proactively with something like Snopios. If they, imperm or Dark Ruler your board, so that way you can't use your tuners, you can just use that in order to get back into the game. Next, 2 Shift and 2 Paces. So these guys are, of course, the OG Ghoti tuners. I'm running 2 of each. So this one, Paces, when it's on the field, you can banish it to special summon a fish from your hand. This is really good to summon Seeks off of if you draw it. And then this one, you banish it from the grave in order to give another fish monster 500 attack till the end of the turn. This is really good with a card that we will talk about later. But then both of them, they special summon themselves during the standby phase, and then during the main phase as a quick effect, you can synchro if it will special summon that turn. Okay, so that's all for the Ghoti monsters. Now for the generic fish monsters. I'm running 3 lifeless leaf fish. So this is basically a Foolish Burial on summon, and the one you're mainly going to be Foolish Burialing is Shift, because just this by itself is the level 6 Synchro Arianpos, which can banish Zep to get you to a level 8, and that's just off of this one card. Okay, so that's not even if you have any other extenders or anything. So this at minimum, just this at minimum, is a level 8 Synchro during your opponent's turn. And then finally, rounding out the monster, 3 copies of Beautiful Princess. So when this one is summoned, you banish it for cost, which is really nice in terms of dodging things like Valor and Imperm. In order to special summon a level 4 lower fish monster from your deck, which is usually going to be this guy. So yeah, just another way to kind of get your plays started. Makes the deck a little more fast-paced, a little more consistent. And that's going to be it for the monsters. Next, going into the spells. 3 copies of the Field spell, the Most Distant, Deepest Depths. So this is basically you banish a fish from your hand to add a Ghoti from your deck to your hand. And you can also banish it from the graveyard. I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but you can banish from hand or grave to search. And then if it's if a fish monster is special summon while this is in your grave, you can banish a fish you control to add this back to your hand. So you can even get it back from the graveyard, which is really nice. And then while you control a fish synchro monster, it can't be destroyed or banished by card effects. So that's really nice, just being able to be resistant to any kind of removal, whether it be your own removal with Deep Beyond or your opponent's removal with things like Cosmic Cyclone. Next, going into the draw power, we have 3 copies of Pot of Desires and 2 Moray of Avarice. So, unfortunately, with Pot of Desires, every time I activated it, it got negated, which is really, really sad. But it is still a good card, and now that it's back at 3, it just helps make the deck all that much more consistent. Moray of Avarice, this is something that you can use if you have extra bodies. After special summoning your tuners back during the standby phase, you can banish them to draw 2. And since it banishes for cost, even if this gets negated, you banished your fish, so then you can bring it back during your opponent's turn in order to synchro with them. So it's a nice little utility card there. Next, going to the one-of spells, we have 1 Gold Sarcophagus, 1 Reasoning, 1 Terraforming, and 1 Fishing Kicks. So, Fishing Kicks, if you have 3 or more banished fish, then I can target a card on the field and banish it. I use this to out a 4,000 attack Borreload Savage Dragon against Odd Eyes in game 1 when I completely broke his board. So that was fun. Terraforming, adding the field spell. Enough said there. Reasoning, especially now that we have something like Seeks, we like to use this in order to not only bait Ash, but also it can get your play started. I think I got a lifeless leaf fish off of it. No, I got a Beautiful Princess off of this. The guy declared level 2, and I got Beautiful Princess off of this. So that was really nice. And then Gold Sark is just a starter. Just a Gold Sark by itself can potentially be the level 10 synchro, because what you do is you use this, banish Seeks. Seeks banish either Shift or Paces from your hand. Special summons itself, and then you add the other level 2 tuner that you didn't have in your hand already, and then immediately banish it with Seeks' effect. And then you have 2 of your level 2 tuners banished plus a level 6 body on field, so that can go into a level 10 synchro during your opponent's turn. So yeah, that's really nice. Next, going on to the trap cards. Starting off with 2 copies of Ghoti Cosmos and 1 copy of Ghoti Chain. So Cosmos, basically this is a way, it's usually just a way to keep your fish monsters from dying. Like, say, if they Dark Ruler your board, you can activate this to where they can't be destroyed by battle. Or it can make it to where the activation and effects of your fish monsters can't be negated, so that's another way to combat Dark Ruler, or Droplet, or something like that. Or even something like Call by the Grave as well, if you have at least 4 banished fish. But I did want to highlight the last effect, which normally doesn't happen, but I actually made it happen in Game 1 against the Engine Pile deck. I had exactly 8 banished fish, so I was able to synchro summon Deep Beyond during his turn with this. So yeah, that was really awesome. And then it was also up to like 8,500 attack because of all the banished monsters. It was hilarious. But yeah, and then one Ghoti chain, basically you banish a fish you control, special summon a Ghoti from anywhere, but it gets banished when it leaves the field, which of course is usually a good thing for Ghoti. So yeah, that's just a way to get whatever levels you want in order to perform synchro summons. Again, really good with something like Zep, where when it gets special summoned, it just immediately synchros. Next is Ghoti Fury. Running 2 of this serves as temporary removal. So you can target a fish you control and a monster your opponent controls, banish both till your next standby phase. And then you can also banish it from your field or graveyard in order to give your fish monsters an attack boost when a fish monster is special summoned. But I usually don't use it for that. I usually do it for the temporary removal effect. And then finally, rounding out the 40-card main deck, 1 copy of O Fish. So basically, when your opponent activates a monster effect, I can shuffle a banished fish back into the deck to negate the activation and destroy it. I only run 1 of this because it is slightly anti-synergistic, because you know, in Ghoti you want your fish to be banished, but then this you're shuffling them back into the deck, so you wouldn't be able to special summon it. However, depending on what you negate, it can be worth it. And this is actually pretty good at recycling Beautiful Princess back into the deck. So I figured there's no harm in running in at 1, and it is another layer of interruption, so I figured it couldn't hurt. Next, moving on to the extra deck. Starting off with some of our generic links, running 1 Mistar Boy and 2 copies of Abyss Keeper. So, Mistar Boy, basically, he pumps up all water monsters by 500, but then also debuffs all fires by 400. And then if it gets destroyed, you get a water monster back to your hand from the graveyard. So yeah, that's really good to make after you've already summoned Deep Beyond, so that way you can just focus on pumping it up as large as possible in order to just beat your opponent down. Next, 2 copies of Abyss Keeper. This card is also a lot better after Phantom Nightmare, because if you can make this, then you can use it to special summon the Seeks from your hand, which will proc its special summon effect. So that can help you get into some of your synchro plays. And then you can also target a fish that it points to and a card your opponent controls and banish them both. So again, just great synergy with the Ghoti. It's basically designed for Ghoti, it's just not a Ghoti card in name. Next, moving on to our synchros. This part is going to be fairly quick, I think. 3 copies of Arion Post, Serpent of the Ghoti. This is a level 6. Basically, when it's summoned, you banish a level 6, or not level 6, a fish monster from your deck. That's usually going to be Zep. If you make it during your opponent's turn, or if you make it during your turn, you can dump either Paces or Shift. And when it's synchroed, you banish a fish from your grave in order to search. So that's really nice. You can use it. You can banish itself to search Snopios for more interaction during your opponent's turn. Next is Ascan, the Bicorn Ghoti. So this is one of your level 8s. When it's summoned, it's basically kind of like an Icarus attack. You banish one you control and one your opponent controls. And then if you banish this, you banish a different Ghoti from your grave in order to special summon it back. So that's really nice. Just being able to provide interruption and keep your board presence. Next is Guoglim, Spear of the Ghoti. So with this guy, He's basically like a Shaddoll construct, but for banishing. So at the start of the damage step, when it battles a monster, that opponent's monster gets banished. And then it does have a thing where you can banish it during the standby phase to special summon its synchro materials back from the grave. But I don't use that one all that much. It's mainly just for the removal effect if I need it. I actually did use this in one of the games against the engine pile deck. I attempted to banish his Titaniclad, but since it had been fusion summoned that turn, it was unaffected, and I forgot it had that effect, so I ended up taking some damage, but it's okay. And then finally, rounding out the extra deck is 3 copies of Ghoti of the Deep Beyond. This is the ultimate goal of the deck. You want to make this during your opponent's turn, so it banishes everything on the field, and then it revives itself during the next standby phase, and its original attack becomes 500 times the number of banished monsters, so that is both your banished monsters and your opponent's banished monsters. So obviously it can get really, really big. So yeah, it's a board wipe and just a giant beat stick when it comes back. So yeah, that's basically it for the deck. I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. I tried to go a little quicker on this one just because we've done this before, but then again, we also had to explain some of the new cards, so hopefully this video didn't turn out too long. I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, vote in the locals poll, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.